Hey, it's Brian here. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Go Be More podcast. At Go Be More, our mission is simple. We want you to chase your dreams, and our apparel is designed to be a constant reminder of your commitment. This podcast aims to give you the motivation and mindset to get started and keep going. It's been a busy and emotional week for John. After last week's podcast, where he shared his experience with kidney disease, and his appearance on the Clean Sport podcast, where they also covered it, he's been a bit overwhelmed with the response. We decided to talk through how he's feeling right now, why sharing his story has brought out a lot of emotions for him, and what he really laments about the way his career ended. It's a heartfelt episode, and John does a remarkable job of capturing his feelings and expressing them in his uniquely inspiring way. John is one of the kindest, most generous and loving people in the world. He isn't afraid to put himself out there, to dream big and to feel big. It's one of the many ways I aspire to be more like him. All right, let's go check in with John. Hey John, how's it going?
It's going great this time.
Are you recording this time?
That was really funny. That was really funny. I mean, we're recording at a different hour than usual, and my brain is all over the place because of emotionally because of what I did recently with regards to a recent interview and. I'm trying to write a book and finish my first book and my story, my memoir and stuff. So yeah, I'm all over the place emotionally today.
Well, this is I don't know if I have a specific theme or a topic like most of our podcasts are, but I wanted to start off with a couple things, which are just in general. I like our Tuesday updates to start off with a little bit of an update on what's going on with Go Be More. I think it's nice. Check in. And so I figured we'd talk a little bit about Just One Challenge, because I know you've been driving a lot of stuff on that, and that's been it's been a lot of fun to see its growth there. But then the main topic for me today is I want to check in with you and see how you're doing now that you've had a couple different big podcasts, including ours last week, where you actually really tell the full story of your kidney disease, your experience, your diagnosis, your surgery. It's been a pretty big week, and I know you've been getting a lot of feedback from people, so that's what I figured we'd dive into and just see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to do that. I think it'll be good. Therapeutically, I think it'll be really good for me to be able to talk about it, because I felt like I was itching to talk about it. I was getting some text messages from some longtime friends that had listened to the episode. Yep. It was with Clean Sport Collective, their podcast, and with Kara Goucher, Chris McClung, and I think the other person's Shannon. She wasn't on the interview with me, but she's also one of the hosts. And yeah, it was crazy. I honestly totally think, personally, I think I kind of didn't do exactly what I think we were all expecting me to do and talk as much about Clean Sport and until the very end of the interview. It was okay. I mean, they were asking really great questions about Chris and Kara about just my story, and it's just so funny because it's really the first time I've talked about my career in the way that I talked about it in that moment. I mean, you and I have had lots of conversations about it, but it was really different that particular day, which was just last Friday, or whatever day that was. It was a few weeks ago. I don't know. It was recently. and it was interesting for me because I just haven't really done anything with my, I haven't explored my story the way that I did that day. It's the easiest way to put it. Right. And when I did, I've told the story so many different ways, talking about it with friends or family, just pieces of it. Obviously, you and I have talked about and dissected my story in many, many conversations. But when I told it in the way that I told it, from like my childhood to how I got into sport, to the collegiate experience, to the professional experience, to my kidney disease and what happened in that moment. And then fast forward 12 years later, after making, the Olympic team as an alternate, where I am now with all of that. And it was the first time I had ever, and I'm still very emotional about it. I feel emotional even just saying it now because I just I feel like there was this, this unfinished business. And I think I guess reconciled with it. I haven't reconciled with it, like what happened. And what happened was, I was diagnosed with a terminal kidney disease and I was 26 and I was one of the best milers in the world. And then I had achieved, Kara put it really well. Kara Goucher, one of the co-hosts for the Clean Sport Collective podcast, she's one of the greatest female distance runners in United States history and in the world. And she understands where I was coming from, and she's like, yeah, you had it taken away from you, and you had just gone through all this journey that you just told us about, this dream as a 14-year-old kid to, struggling in high school at many moments and barely breaking out right at the end of your senior year, only to have that repeated again in college, breakout freshman year, 3 years of stress fractures, and then a senior year that's one of the greatest maybe of all time, honestly, collegiately speaking, 17 personal bests in one season. I don't know if anybody who's ever done that, and in one season. And they weren't small jumps; they were big jumps, and then a professional career and pretty good first year out, and then another injury, broken foot, should have ended my career, and then I make the Olympic team 2 years later, and then a terminal disease. It was just like every single time you think it's gonna get going, I get knocked down. And it was like, I don't know if I would love your feedback because I don't know too many people that have ever said, oh, I know somebody who dreams bigger than you, John, and like full-heartedly believes it. So for somebody who's like fully invested in the dream, to have that happen so many times and then to have it, to finally be there and then to have it just taken all away. I think when she said it like that, and then when Chris asked the question, what happened after you walked out of the doctor's office after being told you're going to die?
Yeah.
And you're on top of the world, athletically speaking. You'd finally achieved your dream. You're on the cusp of re-signing a new contract with the biggest sporting brand in the world. And then you're told you're going to die. What did you do with that information? I was like, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I basically quit the sport. I basically, in my mind, was like, I have to focus on solving this problem. And that was tough because I felt like that's when my career ended, even though it shouldn't have ended then.
What's interesting is we just, for everybody who hasn't listened to our last episode, we go into detail of all the ins and outs of your case, right? Of your experience, but not in a very non-emotional way, right? Our discussion last week was very clinical in the sense of let's just document the facts as we know them for your situation, right? And we wanted to sort of cover all the bases, and I think last week's episode for us was an opportunity to sort of create a reference document or a place of reference for all the key information. If somebody wants to get an overview of your experience, they can go to that particular episode, right? So we didn't really get into the emotions that much. We didn't get into that piece of it. And then that's what you got into on the Clean Sport Co podcast in a way. And
surprisingly, I didn't think it was, I was ready to go after all the cheaters and all this. So I was ready to go after that. And I'm on there crying and I'm like, what am I doing? This is totally ruining their podcast right now. This is awful. And not awful. I felt bad. I was like, we barely even talked about, and I have so much to say about that. And I'm like, I think we spent maybe 15 minutes talking about it. It was a good 15 minutes, but it took a lot to get to that moment.
Well,
in the episode.
I'm not sure. I think that they will find that episode stands out amongst their listeners in a very different way than maybe some of the other ones that they've done, right? Because you were so open and kind of went to a place that maybe you've been trying not to go to, right? It's maybe been there, but you haven't been allowed yourself to deal with the loss that you felt over, what happened. I would say from 2008. Like it was, and part of that is probably because it was sort of a slow thing. It didn't happen in one day. I mean, you maybe got your diagnosis in one day, but you were still competing and you were still kind of doing things. But we talked about this a little bit last week. And one of the things that stood out to me last week in our podcast is that when you spoke about the diagnosis, the only thing, we didn't get into the emotions of it, but we talked about how your priorities shifted. Right. And
Yeah.
It went from being running was like your number one priority. You had some relationships, but whatever, those relationships never went very far because running was always the number one priority. And I think being told that you had a terminal disease, it just really upset all those priorities for you. Right. And suddenly running was not number one. And, having a family, having a relationship, having a partner, all these other things started to become much more important. And that's totally natural, right? It's totally normal, but it doesn't change the fact that maybe that you felt a sense of loss deep inside about what you kind of didn't get to pursue, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that because I never really let go of the idea that I was done, even though it was just so subtle, It's like I said, it was more of like a thing in my head. I think I shifted, like you said, it was like the priority shifted. But I think I in many ways had made the decision in that moment where it was like, well, how could I even consider continuing when I was just told that I have this thing that I don't even understand, and that the only two options to even deal with it, prednisone, this steroid that is just awful side effects, or blood pressure medication, which again, either medication or prescription or prescribed treatment option was literally going to make it impossible for me to train and compete. So I was like, and I turned them down. I was like, I'm not doing that. So now what do I do? And it was a confusing time. I was extremely confused. I don't know. I mean, I can't say that anybody else is supposed to be able to figure it out for me, including my mom or my dad. I mean, nobody really knew what the heck was going on. Nobody really understood what that meant. And it was confusing for everybody. And I didn't look sick. Right. I didn't look sick. I mean, I just made an Olympic team. What are you talking about? Halfway towards kidney failure. You got a terminal disease. Your kidneys are going to eventually deteriorate and fail. Like, what? Nobody understood it. I looked fine.
Yeah.
So that's the terrible thing about kidney disease, is that everybody, you don't know you have it until it's too late. That's usually how it goes. And by the time you're actually officially diagnosed with something, you're done. Like you're possibly months away from being on dialysis. It does happen that fast. And I didn't really know that in that moment at that time. But as I've learned about how this progresses and what usually happens after you kind of go through what I went through, the biopsy, the urinalysis, and all this other stuff, the tests, and then the diagnosis. It's like, yeah, when you get the diagnosis, it's usually not good news. Like, it's pretty much like, all right, get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready. And so, yeah, I didn't know that, but I knew that I don't think I should be prioritizing running all over the world right now.
Yeah, you mentioned that in ours where you were talking about one of the hard parts of running was just not even knowing if you were doing damage by running, right? Like what is this workout having is it having a extra negative effect on your health, or and there's so much, the unknowns make it really difficult, right, to know what to do. And but I guess what I'm curious about more than anything, because people, I encourage them, if they haven't, to hear the episode we did last week, of course, to get the overall, that's the overview, I think, of your entire situation, and they can hear about
Mm-hmm.
your treatment and get a better feel for where you're at now. And of course, the episode with Kara and Clean Sport Co. it's kind of why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because a lot of emotion came out in that episode, and I think you're getting a lot of feedback now from
Mm-hmm.
people who you've maybe known for a long time, or maybe people who are even hearing your story for the first time. I'm not sure. And so I wanted to sort of touch base with you, because we've had this conversation for a long time about how you would like to be an advocate for stem cell research, especially around FSGS and chronic kidney disease, and how you would like to share your story. But
Mm-hmm.
but part of sharing your story is really putting yourself out there, and you've been doing that now, and I'm kind of curious to know sort of how you're feeling in this sort of the first reactions to the feedback you're getting, and to how you're feeling, maybe diving into this in a more emotional way than maybe you anticipated when we got started.
Well, I always knew that I'd be emotional about it because I'm an emotional person, you know.
Okay.
But like the thing that surprised me about it is a part of it is, um, I think people's reaction to it, partly because of all the work that we're doing with Go Be More, and like my pouring my soul into my heart and soul into the energy behind it. It's funny, like we feel like we're not getting a lot of stuff done that needs to be done when you're building a business. But I think the thing that it's our superpower that a lot of businesses will never have is this genuineness, this authenticity that most businesses just never will have. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's why this is growing, even when we're totally, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm botching it in so many areas because there's only so much I could do every day.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, the things that I am contributing are like, I feel the weight of it is so significant that that it's okay that I'm not getting everything done as quickly as I'd like as far as building our business together, our brand. But at the same time, I'm like, the value of what I'm doing, I think it's so valuable because of pouring my heart into it. And I really mean what I say. And it's not about me at all, even though it's a reflection of me, and my face and voice might
Mm-hmm.
be all over the place. I feel like I'm just a vehicle carrying the message. I'm just doing the work. I'm like the farmer planting the seeds kind of a thing. So I don't feel egotistical at all. I feel very much like love and just like great gratitude to be a part of something. It's funny in my opinion, my belief is that this is going to be our legacy. A big part of our life is going to be this thing that we're building. And I think it's going to be that impactful. Size of it doesn't matter as much as like the impact of it, and
Mm-hmm.
how long will the impact resonate. And I feel like it will resonate for many years to come. And it's because of the storytelling that's involved in this venture of ours. And there's love. There's so much love in this going into that. And I feel like as I've been doing that with the work with Go Be More, I've also been uncovering and opening up and making myself vulnerable to sharing my story. I wasn't in a position, I think, for many years to do it because I just didn't see it very clearly. But doing this other work has allowed me to do that. And now, as I start to actually tell my story, of course, it's so much love that's going into it. And it's like, I feel like my story is everybody's. It's like it belongs to everybody. So I feel like I'm giving back to people when I give of myself like that, put myself in that vulnerable position.
Mm-hmm.
But then on top of that, the thing that's really crazy is I feel like I'm actually hearing my story for the first time too, you know.
Oh,
And
that's
then
very
I'm hearing what I went through, and I'm going, oh my gosh,
Do you
like
feel like
wow,
do
that's
you,
crazy.
do you feel like you're hearing a different person's story? Like that you are a different person now, and it's kind of feels sort of foreign to experience it, or do you find yourself transported back to that time, and are you feeling yourself really connected to who you were at that time when you hear the story?
Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm time traveling, and I feel like I'm very aware of what I'm seeing in those moments. Like because of the way that my mind works, like I see those moments like extremely clear. Like I'm literally right now in my mind in the parking lot on the day that I walked out of the doctor's office when it was twilight, 4 or 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the afternoon or evening. The sun was setting. The sky was like purple and pink. It was slightly cloudy. Like I'm in that spot. I'm in the parking lot at Grossmont Hospital, like walking out of the doctor's office, walking towards my car. Like I'm in that moment right now, and I could feel it. I could feel the coolness of the air. I could see my surroundings so clearly, you know.
Mm,
And so as I go back and I tell the story and I relive that moment, it's like in all these different moments that I'm reliving, I'm seeing it, but I'm seeing it more clearly, and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's what I was feeling. So
mm-hmm.
when I cried on the podcast interview with Kara Goucher and Chris McClung that on their podcast. The reason why I cried was because I saw very clearly what happened in that moment for the first time.
Mm,
That is when it ended, my running career,
yeah.
and I didn't realize that until that moment, literally.
Yep.
And I cried for that person. You know, I cried for that person. You know, I
Yeah.
cried for that young man because I knew how much it meant, you know, and I feel frustrated because I was like, you know, I'm like, man, you know, like I felt like I'm mad because I'm like, I want to prove that I was the best, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, as much as I love my guys, man, you know, my peers, um, I wanted to beat them
Yeah.
because I knew I could. I
Yep.
knew I could. And I was proving it. I was proving it. I think 2006 senior championships, the USA championships, I think everybody knew.
Yeah.
I think everybody knew, and they could see it. And you know, I can't say that I wish my foot didn't break because that's just silly to do that. That's not
Right.
fair. But
Yep.
I mean, I tell you what, if my foot didn't break, I highly doubt that I would not have won the 8 and the 15 that weekend.
Mm.
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. And I just wish I would have had the chance to at least answer that question because I
Yeah.
feel like I earned it. I feel like I earned it. I did the work, man. I didn't give up. You know, and so that's why I cry for that kid. You know, I think I would have made the Olympic team in 2012. I think I would have medaled. I think I was on the rise. I think I would have been the best miler in the world for a while and have enjoyed that moment. And I feel like I never ever really got to get back to that. I was on track to doing that. I think that I missed out, and I feel bad for that kid, you know?
Yeah. I think back on our discussion of it, and there are so many things that have to go right for someone to achieve something like what you're talking about, right? Which is to be the best in the world, right? To really, really reach the pinnacle. So many things have to go right. You have to have the talent, you have to have the drive, the focus, the discipline. You have to have all these things that whether you learn them and you develop them, or you innately have them, but you have to have to love what you're doing, the passion, all these other things. And so much of it still, even within that, there's a large group of people who have all of those qualities or skills or abilities,
Yeah.
you want to call them, right? And then within there, now you need to stay healthy. You need to stay, you need to make good life decisions. You need to have all these other things happen that it's less about what's driving you to the goal and more about what's holding you back from achieving it. Right. And in your case, you know, what got thrown at you was this gigantic speed bump, for lack of a better word. Right. It was just, I don't know the right thing. It's like, maybe in a different situation, in a different time, you could have navigated it and gotten past it and kept going. But in the moment, in the life that you were living at that time, it was kind of too much, too unexpected, too big, too something. I don't know the right word I'm looking for, but that's great. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about it, right, from our conversation, and one of the things we talked about around that time with you was that this didn't hit you at a time of real stability, right? Like if it had hit you at a time when you were in a great place with your coach, with your contract, with your, you know, maybe with a strong, in a strong relationship with somebody who was there to support you the whole time, you know, all this kind of stuff, if all that had been in place, maybe this gets handled differently. But there was a timing aspect that's just, you can't really predict either, but it just sort of, and it feels like for you personally, maybe the worst type of obstacle to be thrown at you at the worst possible time. And so I totally relate to how, when you're saying like, I feel like it got stolen from me. It's like, yeah, like, how are you supposed to navigate that in the situation that you were in, you know?
Yeah, no. And I, you know, I appreciate the way that you talk about it, or at least the way that you're addressing it, because, I mean, you've known me for, you know, pretty much half my life, and, more than half my life. And so, I mean, so you know me, and I think the thing that it's been interesting. So, I mean, the topic is like, what's the emotion? What's the emotion been like talking about it?
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting too is like, I've had 12 years to think about it, you know, and I'm now kind of diving into it and talking about it. And I mean, I guess I feel like I kind of have a right to talk about it now, because I have, it's been so much time, you know, and so I've had some time to reflect on it in some way, shape, or form. And the funny thing is, in a lot of ways, I've kind of been okay with it, because I have moved on,
Yep.
To some extent, but there's still wounds, and we all have wounds from our past, from all these different things that we've gone through, relationships and experiences and things like that. In our perspective in the moment, it evolves as time goes on. And obviously, when you go back into the moment, certain things that you felt then that you didn't reconcile, it will come up. And so I think that, like, when I cried, I think I didn't cry then.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
I cried now because I didn't cry then. You know, like how I feel, like, and I'm kind of worn out from it still. Like, you know, however many days ago the interview was, it wore me out. You know, it threw me off, because I think that I was like kind of healing, you know, from something that I didn't get to heal. And again, I do apologize to Kara and Chris, because I'm like, it wasn't exactly an interview I was planning on giving. I really prepared for it, and like that, my story was not a big part of that interview in my head. I was like, not that part of the story. So now I'm telling the story, and I'm like, you know, even talking to you now, I'm like, man, I think that what's interesting is that my perspective on what I've done, or what I shared a few weeks ago, is so much different. It's going to be so different a couple of weeks from now, like my perspective on it. And it's going to keep changing, because I'm getting older, you know, and I have to be okay with what happened, and I have to see the good in it, and be okay with it. And, you know, I want to be very clear. Like, I love my rivals, you know, because they're good men. The guys that I've known, that competed against or have chatted with, that I've seen succeed when I was kind of in the middle of my kind of on the rise and they're coming in, or the guys that came in when I was exiting the sport in some way, shape, or form. Like, I love those guys, I'm talking about the guys because I'm talking about the guys that I competed against, but all the men and women in general, like connecting with Kara and chatting with her. I never got to really connect with her until recently, but I've always known of her and Adam. And obviously Adam's he's like a god to me. I mean, he's, he's a hero. I mean, he's one of my heroes. And so I know of these people, and I'm like, God, they don't know who the heck I am. And she's like, well, are you kidding me? Of course we know who you are, and Abdi and all these people. And it's cool, but I wanted to beat these guys, I wanted to be one of the greats. And I feel like I'll never get that. And that's the part that sucks, because I feel like I actually was one of them. And I think that I don't need it, but I fought for it. And I feel like, damn it, I was so close, and I feel like I know it, and I just wanted to be. I wanted to prove that because it was real, not because I need to prove anything to anybody, but because it was real. Like I'm like, I did it, and I just wanted it to be proven. I want the proof there, and I could die not having the proof. I'm not saying that I can't live with that not having happened. It's just that I know the truth.
Yes.
And I'm just like, for me, I want it there. I want it there just for me. Like, yeah, I beat those cats. Yeah, I got that medal. Yeah, I showed up and did the thing because that was a part of the plan. That was part of what was in my head. That's what I set out to do. And I'm like, man, I showed up. I did it, and I was so close to just kind of like buttoning it up with a couple of pieces of evidence.
Yes.
Like, I was making my case. I'm one of the greats, and I just needed a few more things on my resume to prove it, and then I'm good. Because I'm like, I want my name next to them because I feel like I'm one of them, and now I don't. So I kind of feel like a phony. That's how I feel. So it's like, it breaks my heart because I'm like, man.
I was meaning to ask you, as you talk about this more and you're sharing it, and obviously it's very emotional, do you find yourself kind of beating yourself up about how you handled it in the past? Like, are you?
No, not at all. No.
Okay, good.
No, I feel a lot of love for it. I feel a lot of I feel very fond for it, like it's like a flower. I'm like I am very delicate with it. I don't feel like it's fair to beat myself up because so many people don't even, I mean, come on. Sub 4 minute miler, one of the greatest, arguably in UCLA history, greatest maybe in the Cayman Islands history, one of the fastest African Americans in U.S. history, one of the fastest Americans ever.
Yeah,
I made an Olympic team it's not like I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I can't look at that and go, oh, you're a big fat loser. But what I do feel is like, this is just my own personal thing. It's not about what anybody else thinks. I don't care what anybody else thinks because I never did it for anybody else. When I say prove something, it was just to prove to myself that I was good enough, that I did do the thing that I think I did, because I had the vision. And we're gonna talk about this in just a second because we had this wonderful interview with Wesley Williams. 14 years, 15 years, Paralympic guide runner, unbelievably decorated Paralympian and Paralympic guide runner. And we talked about this documentary, The Weight of Gold. It ties into what that documentary is about as it relates to the Olympics and mental health. That's the kind of same thing I'm talking about, touching on this thing. When you really go there, and this is what people have a problem with when we talk about dreaming. They don't want to go there because they don't think that they can recover from the disappointment.
Yeah.
So when you're all in and it doesn't work out, it's very hard to recover. And that's a part of what I struggle with mentally, mental health wise. Like, that is a real thing. It's a real thing,
How about, so I'm glad that you're not beating yourself up over what you didn't accomplish. And how about when you think back on that period and you look at the decisions you made, how are you evaluating yourself? Are you beating yourself up about like the actions that you took at that time and the alternative things that you could have? And I'm not asking this question because I want you to, of course not. It's more because I don't want you to. But I know when you're analyzing your past, it's very easy to look at all the paths you could have taken and try to second guess, like decisions you made, and especially when emotions are very raw. And that's why I'm mostly curious, because I mean, the reality of all of us is we like to think that we have all the perfect information and that and that our decisions are all based off of like the facts of the matter. But most of the time the decisions we make in our lives are based off of really incomplete information and a lot of mixed up emotions, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And in a case like what you were dealing with, I mean, that's just going to be heightened to such a degree. And so, I have obviously listened back to the episodes, and I remember thinking a lot at the time that, Mom, seeing you go through some of the emotions of the feedback you're getting and what it's been like to sort of deal with it, I just find myself a little concerned, I suppose, that you're not sort of, getting negative about how you handled it in the past, because I personally believe that you're not going to get any benefit out of doing that if you are.
No, I think that everything happened the way that it was supposed to happen, and I was where I was, in terms of being able to make the decisions that I made at the time. It was the best decisions that I could possibly make. Nothing could have been any different. I think that that's what people need to know about where they're at in life, because I was just talking to a really good friend of mine who I want to be a guest on our podcast. He's actually fellow sub 4 minute miler, Brian Lindsay from BYU. We had a wonderful conversation just the other day, and we hadn't talked to each other in a few years, but he's probably one of my closest. I became so close with a lot of my peers and rivals in college from all the other colleges, because I just had such a fond appreciation and respect for those guys at the top at the game, because we're like, I knew what we were doing to get to the top. We were busting our butts, man. Yeah. So we had a mutual respect for each other. And I'm like, I'm so confident in me that I could be friends with you and still compete against you and be excited to beat your butt in the race, and then be even equally as excited to talk with you and cool down with you afterwards, Right. So Brian and I are like brothers. I love this man to death. And he and I were talking, and, I said to him, one of the things we were talking about was, breaking 4 on the same day, in the same race. And being tied together forever, and historically because of that. And, looking back at our journey and saying, certain things could have gone certain ways, but I said, I said something to him about just like the way things work out. I said, ultimately you make the best decisions that you can make at the time that you're making them. And honestly, everything that you do, even if it's wrong, is still right, because it's the best that you could do, Yep. And on top of that, as long as your intentions are there, if you're like actually trying to do the right thing and you're trying to do the best that you could, the best thing that you could possibly do in the moment, I don't know how you could really look back at your journey and go, oh man, you messed up. I'm like, nah, I don't feel like that at all. I just would have liked to have finished what I started, Brian. That's it. Yeah, it's not that. No, every decision I made with love. I have no regrets. I don't beat myself up about it, because it is a waste of time. I don't believe in that. And so when I do feel any type of remorse about anything, it's only because I failed to do what I felt was, I failed to meet my expectation. Mm-hmm. Not because I didn't feel like I did the best that I could. I always do the best that I can. So I have no regrets on the decision I made, and I wouldn't change a damn thing.
I was thinking, so John, this is me getting a little speculative here. And I don't know, it might change the discussion a little bit, but one of the things that you talked about last week that stands out to me now is that, and we've mentioned it here, when you got this diagnosis, you had a lot of things going on. You were switching to run for the Cayman Islands. You dropped your Nike contract. You were changing coaches. I mean, there was a lot of things that led to let's just say instability, and then on top of that you had this diagnosis, and but what's funny about it is something struck me listening to that podcast again, and I said to myself, realistically, if you had signed with Nike and stayed at the Olympic Training Center, you never would have got your stem cell treatment. That never would have happened, because that never would have been approved. You never would have heard about it. It would have just, it just wouldn't have happened. And I think from everything we feel at this point is that stem cell treatment has been a great thing for you. And it's created this opportunity for you to do something you really care about, which is to advocate for kidney disease and stem cell research. And it's opened up this opportunity for you. And I've started to think about this, is that, I don't know, something about it came out, and I felt like, not that there was it's like a positive, but it's an opportunity, right? And the course of events that unfolded, they led to you sort of losing maybe one opportunity to chase a very specific dream. But I think it's also created another opportunity to really make a big difference in a way that could change a lot of people's lives. And I'm really excited to be a part of pursuing that opportunity with you, because I think there's a lot of good that can come from that one, right? In a way that is magnified across, in a way that's even much bigger than being able to say, for example, like, look what I did, there's the proof, right?
Right.
So I don't know, there was something about it that I came away feeling kind of, like you said, you always say this better than me, because you're much better with the sayings, but wherever you are, that's where you're meant to be, right? and
that's as good as you can say it.
Well, this is where you are now, right? And it does feel like this is where you're meant to be right now.
Yeah.
From my perspective. So
yeah. I mean, I always say, like, without, one of my favorite quotes is from Frederick Douglass, and he said, without struggle, there could be no progress. And I think that in the same vein, without adversity, I think that it's hard to really discover your greatness, and to bring it out in you. I think that it's the pressure that on the coal that leads to the diamond kind of a thing. It's like so much beauty comes out of the struggle, out of adversity, and out of failure, and when you avoid these things, avoid being challenged, avoid pressure, and avoid facing it when it comes at you unexpectedly. I mean, like, I don't think you seek out a terminal disease and be like, yeah, I'll take that.
Course. Right.
No, I don't want that. But if you're going to give it to me, watch what I do with it, and trust me, I didn't handle it very great in the beginning. But I handled it as well as I could. And I'm here right now. And I don't think that people could say whatever they want to say. I'm fighting for people, I'm fighting for it, and I'm standing up and I'm speaking up and I'm getting better every day about doing it. And I've dedicated the rest of my life to this fight. And that is not going to change. Nothing will change that, because I have to live with this thing for the rest of my life. And I have to wonder every day, am I still good? I'm grateful for that fight, because it gives me something that everybody should wish to have, which is wake up every day and actually feel like, well, if I'm going to live it like it's my last. Because in many ways now, I know for sure I'm definitely more vulnerable than most people, because I got a pre-existing condition. And so it's more real for me. Dying is more real for me. And when people ask all the time, like, I got this great question from a woman through Instagram. Shout out to you, Tammy. I see you. She sent me this question. She was like, how do you stay so grounded? Because she sees what I'm doing, and we be connecting, and we don't even know each other, but we know each other because I talk to her all the time. I gave her a call when we connected on Instagram. I told you this story a while back, man. We were trying to get Go Be More going, and I mean, I was like feeling it, man. I was like, yo, hey, if somebody wants to be inspired, I got you, you know, and we were talking and somehow it was just like, I said, give me a call. And I just hit her up at the right time. And we were just like, yo, this is what I feel for you, you know, in terms of just like, you're in a great place. I know the challenges you're going through are this and that, but this is what I believe. And I said, when I listen to her talk, I'm like, I feel energy in people. So I'm like, I know this is what you probably need to hear right now. And I gave it to her and she was like, what? This is crazy. This is awesome. This is what I need to hear. And it was cool. We've been connected ever since. This is like, man, this is like a year ago. Mm-hmm. And she loves what we're doing with Go Be More. She loves what we're doing with the Just One Challenge. And, you know, it's just cool because that's what this has given to me is like this energy, this like, I'm awake. I'm very aware and I'm able to give that to people and give it back to them. And if I didn't have this disease, I don't know if it'd be the same way. I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but it heightens it nonetheless. Yeah, it heightens it. And, you know, I didn't get to finish stuff on the track, but I'm going to tell you what, right now, like the fact that I didn't get to finish on the track, it carries over into everything that I do now. Cause now I'm like, you know what? Y'all better watch out. I'm going to be the best philanthropist in the world. You know, I mean, I'm going to be going out there building communities like crazy. I got some crazy dreams, man. You know, I said, you know, Andrew Carnegie built a whole bunch of libraries. I said, man, I'm going to outdo him. You know, I'm going to give back. I'm going to do my thing. And I said, they're going to remember my name. I said, it might not be from the track stuff. You know, but I said, it's going to be from all the love, you know, that I gave for the rest of my life. And, yeah, this is it, man. So yeah, you know, the disease took some stuff away from me. But it probably took away what I didn't need.
That's a good way to look at it. That's a really good way to look at it. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll check in again. Let's see how it goes. Keep telling your story. I know you've wanted to, and I hope that there's more opportunities and that you take those opportunities to keep sharing it. And thank you for checking in with us on here and sharing how you're feeling, because it's a tough thing to do, to open up old wounds a little bit and explore them in public, you know, but I think it's going to
Wait, what? This is public? What do you mean this is public?
Oh, wait.
I thought this was between you and I. What do you mean you were recording this?
Yeah. We started the podcast with you not recording it.
I thought we were just warming up.
Yeah. All right, John. We'll save the Just One updates for next week. I'm sure we'll have some good ones for the next podcast, but I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being honest as always and sharing your feelings and let's keep this train rolling. Let's keep spreading the word.
You got it, man. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you all for tuning in. You can find links to any articles or items we referenced in the show notes. Please subscribe and be sure to give us a rating. And remember to tell a friend about the show. The Go Be More podcast is produced by Go Be More Apparel. Check us out at gobemore.co. For all of us at Go Be More, we are what the world is chasing, and we hope this podcast helps you become what the world is chasing too.